Hello, everyone. It's Professor Cruz again, and I want to welcome you to week two. Hopefully, you guys had a good spring break. Hopefully, it was a little bit better than mine. As you might be able to see, I kind of been fighting through a sinus infection this past week. So if I sound a little drained, that's why, and that's why the grading's been a little slow on your assignments that were done before spring break. I like to have a clear head when I'm grading your assignments so I can like focus on um, what you got. And so it's been a little hard. So I did do your module one assignments. You've got feedback on that. I want you to look at that feedback and use that feedback in your assignments going forward. I don't change my expectations from week to week. So if it's something I've taken the time to note on that rubric, it's because I want you to avoid that in future assignments. I'm not going to like make up stuff as I go along, but I'm going to keep holding that same standard, throughout each assignment. You'll get your module two Dropbox feedback in the next couple days here as I'm starting to feel a little better and can kind of get a clear focus on that for you guys. This week, we're going to be covering modules 3 and 4. Module 3 is critical thinking, and module 4 is the beginning of our critical thinking application process. Now, the critical thinking application process, or you might hear me refer to it as CTAP, is a big part of this course. And everybody who takes an ethics course at the college is going to do some variation of this. And the way we have it in this course, it's set up in 4 individual assignments. And the idea is to take a case study, which I've provided for you guys, and apply this, critical thinking model to it to get a good, sound ethical decision. We're going to use 2 ethical theories, act utilitarianism, which you'll see in chapter 5, and then conscientology, which I think you'll see in chapter 6 or 7. It's one of those 2. And the idea is we're going to use a consequential theory, which means our outcome that is, whether we decide it's a good outcome or not is dependent upon the outcome itself. So the actions aren't as important as long as we've made a good outcome. And then the non-consequential theories are the opposite, where the outcome's not so much whether or not we did good or bad. It's the actions we took along the way. So it's going to be 2 different differences of ideologies there, and both of them are going to be ethical decisions because we use 2 different processes that are established as ethical, theories, and then you're going to decide which one would you personally think would be, the best to go with that in that decision. Okay, the wisest, most ethical, as we say. So I'll explain a little bit more of that each week as we get to those. But this week we're doing that first part. It's very important that you stay up on that because if you don't do this week's assignment, you still have to create all this information before you can do the next week's assignments, because next week, the 2 assignments you're doing are applying the theories. And so you need the information from this week's assignment before you can go on to those. So please, please, please make sure you get this assignment turned in and make sure you do the best you can on it to set yourself up for success for these other assignments. Now I want to share my screen and we'll go to the course, and I'm going to show you guys around some stuff that's coming up, but also this video might be a little longer because I also want to give you guys a little bit of content, like little mini lectures, if you will, that are going to help you with the focus of each of these assignments, okay? So as you'll see here on the course homepage, I want you guys to be mindful of the news feed where we're putting these videos and any information. And I also want you guys to be mindful of the upcoming events. You'll see that there's a lot this week due, like every week, because as I said, the nature of an 8-week course, unfortunately, is we have to do 2 weeks worth of stuff each week. So, it's pretty fast paced. So you want to make sure you're keeping up with everything marked on the calendar. You'll see that tomorrow is Monday. Your chapter 3 and 4 quizzes are due by 11:59 p.m. Monday, the 24th. As I mentioned before, spring break going forward after week 1, all the quizzes will be due at the beginning of the week. The idea here is that you should have read and noted and quizzed yourself on the chapter before you get started on the assignments. A lot of times people want to jump into the assignments because they're more points, which makes sense, and they put the quiz off to the end. But the problem is that you're not really prepared for the assignment itself until you've actually solidified the information from the chapter, because it's going to help you guys out. You can really see a difference between the people who do the assignments before they do the quizzes and versus after. The ones who are after typically score a little bit better because they're a little more well prepared. So keep that in mind, okay? And then Thursday, your Dropbox discussion board assignment is due for module 3. Now keep in mind, this is due Thursday night in both places. You have to have it submitted to the Dropbox and you have to have it posted to the discussion board on Thursday before 11:59 p.m. to get full credit. If you miss one of those spots, it's going to be a 0 because it'll be like it wasn't turned in. You have to put it into the Dropbox for grading, and then you have to put it on the discussion board for your classmates to review. And that's really important for that part too, because you can't have a discussion assignment if you never post it up for people to look at on the discussion board, okay? So that's due, you'll see that's due in both places on Thursday. On Friday, your midterm argument topic selection is due. So if you go to the midterm module, you'll see the list of the 9 topics, and it's each topic has like what it is, like animal rights or labor or something like that. And there's a question written. And the idea of in your midterm, you're going to answer that question, whether you believe it's ethical or unethical. If you've been keeping up with it a little bit and seeing what the midterm looks like, it's not for 2 more weeks, but essentially you're going to do a 3-minute recording of yourself where you give an argument off of your topic. I'm going to give more directions on how to do that. One thing I want you to keep in mind is, yes, this requires you to be on camera, videotaping yourself and posting it to the discussion board. So if there's any technology issues or requirements that you have 2 weeks to get them set up. So please don't let that be an excuse, because if you're emailing me the day it's due telling me you don't have a camera, I'm going to say you've had a month to prepare for this, right? So like, please, like, let's not get to that position. Now, if you need help, if you have any questions about the technology stuff, please reach out to me. We have computer tutors, we have librarians that could help with this kind of technology stuff as well. If you need it, you can make an appointment with them. So please, there's help available. Let's not let this sneak up on us. I'll have more direction to come on that video like very soon on how I want the video done. So what you need to do for that though is you just need to go in, you need to look at the 9 topics, you need to order them 1 through 9 the way that you would prefer them, 1 being your favorite, 9 being your least favorite, and then submit them to that Dropbox. As they come in, I'm putting them on a list. There's only going to be about 3 students. I think some might have 4 on each topic, so we can have some variation. So if, the longer you wait to select your topic, the less I'm going to be able to guarantee you get your top choice. If you don't submit by the Friday, I'm just going to assign you a topic based off of like what's left. And so if that doesn't sound exciting to you, make sure you get yours in on time. So at least you're making an argument for something that you care about, okay? And then finally, your Module 4 Dropbox is going to be due on Sunday. And that's just in the Dropbox. There's no discussion element for this one, and that's for the critical thinking application one. So let's go to the course content, and we can kind of talk about this a little bit further. So actually, I'll put this in student mode so it'll look like how you see it. Okay. So there's slight variations between slight differences. So we go here, and we are in Module 3, critical thinking. Okay, I'm in the right spot. So you're going to want to watch the faculty videos for supplemental information. You want to look at the rubric to see how I'm going to grade your discussion post if you didn't look at it before. If you did, it's the same one. And then essentially you're looking here to see what the assignment's asking for you. So I'm not going to go into reading every single line for you, because I want you to read these instructions a couple times on your own. I recommend at least 3 times. I had a teacher tell me that before. Once to take it in, too, so you kind of like know for sure what you're doing. And the third time you read it, any little thing that you missed or wasn't making sense should that by then, be cleared up for you. And so what you're going to do in this assignment, you're first, you're asked, okay, um, you're going to say that there's like a student who has attempted to cheat on the exam. I'm asking you to write a syllogism, okay, that shows why they should not cheat on the exam. So your argument must flow, and then you're going to say what kind of argument it was: cogent, inductive, sound, deductive. This will make sense after you read through the chapter. Now, here's an example. Now, I want to warn you, this isn't exactly how it's supposed to look, because if I did that, then everybody just, copy the one that's on here. But this is showing you some premises and a conclusion. But my hint to you, for whoever's watching this video, is this isn't exactly the way it's supposed to be, but it's pretty close, okay? So just make sure. I mean, like it's good, it's mostly there, but like you might have to add a little thing or two here or there, if that makes sense. It's your hint, to make this like really like how it should be, okay? And then you're going to choose a fallacy from the textbook. I think there's like 16 of them or so in the chapter. And you're going to create one original illogical argument, one fallacy, to show like why somebody might be trying to like justify cheating or manipulate somebody into believing it's cheating. Okay, so this is where we're asking you to write the bad thing, if that makes sense. So you're going to name and define the fallacy that you're using. You're going to bold print the name of it. And then, you're going to set it up like this. Like, so the fallacy and the definition. So like this is an example of like two wrongs make a right. So you define it, you cite our textbook because that's where you're getting it from. Then you write your example of what that would look like. Okay. And then you reflect on it. And so in one paragraph, discuss how this knowledge on logic and fallacies can help you with your career and or life. Okay. So then once you do that, you're going to post it to the discussion board. Okay. And then you're going to go back by Sunday and you're going to reply to some of these. Now, when you guys do your replies, for the most part, you did pretty good, but I want you guys to be more substantial in your replies. Don't just say, I like your point, or you made a good point, and then not say what that point is. If you're going to say you like their point, be specific about what you like about it. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to challenge each other in an academic way with these things. But if you just go on there and say, oh, you did a very good job with the post, then I'm not going to give you full credit. You also want to make sure that you're replying to all parts of the post. So there's like 3 different things you're asked to do here, right? You're asked to do the syllogism, write the fallacy, and then do the reflection. So I would like to see commentary about how they handled all aspects of that discussion post. Okay. Now, before we go on to module 4, I'm going to take some time to talk about these arguments a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the presentation I use in the classroom. So this hopefully helps out. So as you'll know from reading the chapter, there's 2 types of arguments, right? There's deductive and there's inductive. Now, here's your first hint. I'm asking you to write a syllogism. Syllogisms are deductive arguments. If you write an inductive argument, you didn't do this assignment correctly, okay? Deductive, the premise and conclusion interrelate. And so we say they're truth preserving. They preserve a truth because these are facts that are indisputable and they make a confident claim. Inductive is the premise and conclusion don't interrelate, and so they're not truth preserving. This doesn't mean they're not good. It just means that we're taking together specific information we know and making a general conclusion. Okay. So the deductive syllogism, what I'm asking you to do for your assignment this week, has 2 premises, and a conclusion. And premise 1 is a rule statement. Premise 2 is a fact statement. And they come to a conclusion, right? And the format is all A is B. This is why I said there's a few little things you'll need to add to the example. All A is B. And that's your rule statement. Then C is A, and that's your fact statement. And then your conclusion is C is B. The idea is here is we have three individual elements, A, B, and C. And we want to show that all three of these things are connected. If you don't have three separate elements that are connected in relation to each other like this in your assignment, it's not going to be correct. Okay. Now, we go from general to specific when we're building this kind of argument. Okay. Now, this is an example you see in the textbook. All dogs are mammals. Heidi is a dog. Therefore, another one of those little things that you need to add, Heidi is a mammal, right? So we know what dogs are. We know that dogs are mammal. If we trust that Heidi is this thing we call a dog, then Heidi is a mammal. You see how all three elements are interrelated and connect. A is B, C is A, therefore C also has to be B. Okay, and this is what we call deductive syllogism. Now you'll see that there's moral deductive arguments as well, which is kind of like what you're doing for this assignment, right? Because you're trying to make a moral claim about cheating. Well, these ones, your first premise is a general moral principle. Premise 2 is a fact or a non-moral premise, and then your conclusion is a specific moral judgment. So here's an example. So like all killing is wrong. Capital punishment is a killing. Capital punishment is wrong. Now, this is a good example of a moral deductive argument, but it's problematic because not everyone's going to believe that capital punishment is the same thing as that, what we call killing, right? And therefore it may or may not be wrong. And that's, kind of some specific moral judgments. But this would be a person who believes it is, trying to make a moral deductive argument about killing. And so this is like, you could say killing is wrong. So capital punishment is wrong. Cold-blooded murder is wrong. You could say that like any form of life taking here is wrong because you're trying to make that moral claim that taking a life is wrong. Now, when you have a deductive argument, this is how you tell what kind of argument to have, if it's sound and valid or not, right? So you need to write a valid and sound deductive argument, okay? Because this is another hint for those watching these videos, which unfortunately isn't the whole class. Cogent and uncogent and all that stuff, that's for deductive arguments. So that's like the little trick in the assignment. That's where, we're trying to trip you up a little bit, see if you're paying attention. If it's a deductive argument, it can only be valid and sound if it's good. If it's not good, it's invalid and unsound. But cogent, uncogent, all that, that's not the right language for a deductive syllogism, right? So here's an example of a valid and unsound deductive argument. Premise 1, phalanges make up fingers. In case you don't know, phalanges are the bones in your fingers. Toes have phalanges. Therefore, all toes are fingers. Now, this is where it gets problematic because phalanges are in your fingers. And toes also have phalanges. These are both true. However, since we know toes and fingers to be different, they're not the same. So we can't say, therefore, all toes are fingers because we know that they're different sizes, shapes, functions. They're not interchangeable on the human body. So while it follows the form, the structure, and it's all true, we know it's unsound. It's valid, right? Because it follows the structure, but it's unsound because the conclusion is false. Okay. Now, comparatively, this is the difference. The enumerative inductive is what I'm asking you not to do. Okay. But I'm going to show you it just so you know the difference, right? This is where you just have a whole bunch of premises that aren't linked to each other, but come up with a conclusion. And you go from specific to general. So you take all the specific stuff and you try to make a general statement. The example from the book, Mars is a sphere, Venus is a sphere, Earth, if I hate to be the one who's breaking this to you, is a sphere, right? There's no flat Earth in this class. Mercury is a sphere, Neptune is a sphere. So it says all planets are probably spherical. Now I get some heat sometimes in class because they're like, oh, all the planets are round. It's like, well, all the planets we've observed are. But as we know about, just about space, we know there's more planets out there that we haven't observed than we have. And so if we can find one single planet out there that's not spherical, maybe there's a cube planet floating around out there somewhere, then we can't 100% say, yes, definitively they're all spherical until we've seen all the data. Right? And so when you have an inductive argument, it's either strong or weak. and it's cogent and uncogent. So that one I just showed you is an example of a strong and cogent. The structure was all true, and the conclusion we're all generally going to accept. Okay. Now here's an example of a weak inductive argument. My dad's a fireman. My mom's dad was a fireman. My cousin's dad is a fireman. My best friend's dad is a fireman. My wife's dad is a fireman. Therefore, all dads are probably firemen. Now we can easily see the problem with this is because if we can find one dad on earth that's not a fireman, we know that they're not all probably firemen. In fact, my own dad's not a fireman, right? And so this is an example of while all the statements are true, they don't make a true conclusion 100% because we would have to see every single dad in the world and find one that's not a fireman. Once we find one that's not a fireman, it's no good. That makes sense? And it's kind of funny. I had a kid in class one day who thought he was going to make a joke and get a laugh and haha, and actually stumbled into something quite important about this kind of thing when he was just trying to get the laugh. But he's like, well, those kids that like to challenge the teacher or whatever, but like in a fun way. And the kid was like, well, what if I grew up in like the city and I saw that pigeon flies and then like a crow flies and I seen like a chicken fly or whatever. So I think all birds are going to fly. I'm like, yes, that's exactly why these aren't truth preserving, because if every bird you've ever observed flies, you would think that it's probably likely that all birds fly. If you haven't seen flightless birds like penguins or, emus or whatever and know of their existence, then of course you would think all birds fly. But as soon as you can find one bird that doesn't fly, it busts that truth preserving nature, and then therefore it's not. So he actually made a really good point about how the amount of information we do or don't have affects how strong or weak an inductive argument really is. Okay. And so that's what you're going to do for your assignment. You're going to write a deductive syllogism. Then you're going to do your fallacy stuff. But I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to let you guys get into the fallacy part on your own, because I think you guys will have some fun with that. And plus, I don't want this video to be a year long. But that'll help you for the assignment. Then when you're going to go into module 4, you're going to start your critical thinking application process. Now, what's important here, there's a case study that says, I've just seen a face. This is the case that we're using. We're all using this case. Do not make up your own case. If you do anything other than this case, you're going to get a 0. The idea is I'm giving this case to 30 of you, but I'm going to get almost 30 different responses because there's a lot of variation that's going to be unique to the person doing it. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on this here, and the case is here. And this is one of the ones I'm actually the coach for the Collegiate Ethics Bowl team that we have here at the college. And we actually go to a regional ethics bowl every fall with attempting to qualify for the nationals. And so this is one of the cases that I liked from the regional case set this year. And so you're going to read through this case. And again, I recommend that 3 reads, right? So you read through it once to see what the situation is, read through it twice to make sure you got all the details, and then the third time to make sure you really know everything that's going on in the situation, okay? Because once you've read that case, then you're going to start the first part of our process, okay? Now, because I want you guys to do good and not focus on whether or not you're getting the formatting perfect and stuff, I have provided the formatting for you, which unfortunately we apparently can't see right now because I've not turned it on. Oh, sorry, guys. You're going to see behind the curtain here for a minute because I'm not going to edit these things. I don't want to spend like forever making them. They're just kind of for your own edification, but I don't think I turned this on. So we're going to go. Yeah, sorry. Unfortunately, it's not visible. Sorry. A little interlude here for a second. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So you're going to go here, you're going to read the case, and then you're going to download this sample format that I provide. Because, it requires you to fill in a chart. And over the years, I've seen people spend more time on doing the chart right versus, if they've actually putting good information on that chart. So all you do is you download this. This is a full APA title page. Change out your name, change out, the date to the proper date. And then when you come here, first thing you're going to do, and when you read through the assignment instructions, you'll see, you're going to state your central ethical issue or your main ethical issue. This is what we did in module 2. Remember, you read an article, you summarized it into a paragraph, and then you wrote that should or what should question about the main ethical issue. That was the practice for this. So in one bold sentence, you're just going to write out the should question, okay? Then you're going to put 3 research topics. Now, you don't actually have to do the research because we have limited time, but what are 3 things that you would research to get more information to make a decision on this case? And where would you get them from? Like, where would you find them and how would it help, make a decision in the case? I'm going to show you guys an example in a minute, so this will make a little more sense, okay? And then you're going to fill out the analysis chart. So this is why I gave you guys the chart. So I don't want you guys stressing out about filling it in. But what you're going to do, you'll see in the chapter that we have these things called stakeholders. Stakeholders are people that are affected by the scenario, by the decision, by the outcome. These are people or entities that represent people. So it could be a company, it could be a school, it could be a government agency, it could be a family, whatever, or an individual person, right? Of your stakeholders, there should be one that you're going to identify as the decision maker. So after you read the case, you're going to stop and think, who needs to make a decision here? And you're going to identify that person as your decision maker. And that's your number one stakeholder. Now, that question should also reflect your decision maker as well. So this way it makes sense. When it says, should so-and-so do such and such, first person I'm looking for here is that so-and-so, right? That's going to be making that decision. So what you're going to do is you're going to list all the decision makers that you see in the case, and maybe even some that would be implied that weren't necessarily listed in the case, but would be logical, people that have getting affected by this scenario. This is what it says here. If you need more spaces, you just right click, you go to insert, and you go to rows below, right? It doesn't just have to be 4, right? Just because I have 4 on here, that's just to make the chart look good. If you see 5, 6, 7 or more, whatever, it's up to you, okay? But make sure you hit all the logical stakeholders that make sense for your case. Then what you're going to do is you're going to think of 4 decisions that your decision maker can do to solve that issue that you brought. Okay? Now, the reason why I like the should question, as we talked about before, is a should or what should. I like the should question because the first 2 are usually implied, right? Do the thing or don't do the thing. And then you can think about 2 more. It gets a little tricky, though, because once you get rid of the obvious ones, you have to kind of think about what goes next. But that's kind of the challenge of this, is to think about it critically and see, what you need to do. So like you list your stakeholders, you make sure you take note of who your decision maker is, you list the options, and then what's left to do is just you fill in a little blurb here about how each person is affected by that option, even the stakeholder. So if your stakeholder does option 1, how is he affected? Option 2, are they affected? And that's, you fill in that whole chart. And that's it for this week. There's nothing to cite because we're not taking anything from the book. You don't need to cite the case because you're not taking anything directly from it. You're just using that as a case study to get you to this part. So once this part's filled out, you put it in the Dropbox and submit it for grading. Now, I'll show you an example real quick of a little scenario that I use in class to help. So we have a situation here. We got this guy, Bob, and Bob has a wife, Mary. And they have a kid, Timmy. Bob's got a neighbor, George. George is a snitch, right? So one day, Bob comes home from work, and George tells him, hey, I think your wife's cheating on you. Every day when you go off to work, some guy shows up, and then he's gone by the time you go back. So, he's got Mary. his wife, and she's got this boyfriend, Steve, and he confronts her and says, "You cheating?" Finds out, yes, she is. So this is the situation now that we're dealing with, okay? So first thing I'm gonna start is with the identification, which is identifying the main moral issue. So for me, should Bob divorce his wife? Like that's the first thing that would come to my mind. If my wife were cheating, my first question in my head is going to be, should I divorce my wife? Or what should Bob do about his wife's cheating? It's whichever way you want to go with it. Doesn't really matter. It's remember, but it's a should, it's a what should. The should question can be answered with yes or no. The what should question can be answered by options, but there's no ors. You don't want to be like, should Bob do this or that? It's one thing, right? And you don't want to lead it. So a lot of people, you want to take your bias out of it for now, because right now you're going to come up with four options. And in this assignment, all four options have a fair chance of being the correct option. If you don't treat it that way, you're going to put bias in your chart and you're going to choose the wrong options. And then I'm going to mark that off for you. Okay. Because me being this third person looking in who's done this a bunch of times, I can tell when you're influencing it to be an answer that you want. So take a step back and don't think about what you would do in this situation. We want to see what the theories tell us to do. So we want to be objective and we want to be clear minded and we want to be fair as we go into this thing. So right now, we're just asking, should Bob divorce his wife, or what should Bob do about his wife's cheating? Now, for the research part, what are three things that I might look up if I were Bob? Divorce law in Florida. Let's pretend he lives where we live. Marriage counseling, success of trial separations. And then in that 3 to 4 sentences under each, because what I want you to do when you do your assignment, I want you to write just this thing on the line and then write the paragraph under it. I would talk about where he would get this information and how it would possibly help him make a decision. Okay. And then we go to the analysis chart. And yes, I noticed that consoling and counseling are not the same thing, but unfortunately, this is a picture and I can't change it. So just bear with me there. But essentially, I come to the chart. There's 5 people straight out in the case. So I put the 5 in there, but you could even think friends and family could be affected by this, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, I want you to really challenge yourself to be creative and think about who all's in this case affected. But Bob's my decision maker, and I know this because I put him right in the question. He's the one who has the decision to make. And then we have Mary, George, the boyfriend, and Timmy. So these are all these other people that we've put in. Now I've come to think of 4 things. Okay. 4 things that Bob could do. Well, like I said about the should question, should implies your first 2 options. So if I said, should Bob divorce his wife? One option is divorce your wife. The other option is not divorce your wife. Does it make sense? So the do nothing option is like Bob could do nothing. It's like Bob doesn't get a divorce. Bob just doesn't do anything, just goes on with his life. Okay. Now be careful to do nothing because people see this and they want to do nothing. Do nothing doesn't always fit because sometimes you have to do something, right? But in this case, Bob could do nothing, meaning he's not going to divorce him. Or Bob could divorce his wife. Bob could ask his wife to go to counseling. Bob could separate from his wife. Now, another little hint I like to give, if you want to get 4 good answers, do the thing, don't do the thing, what's a compromise, and what's more like a nuclear option, or like the worst. Now, don't go crazy with it, because like when I said that the first time, the guy's like, he can kill his wife, and I'm like, yeah, you could technically kill your wife, and that's technically an option, but this is an ethics class. And literally none of the theories, not even ethical egoism, would say that that's a good option. So we don't want to put it on there just to be cute and be funny. And we want to be serious about, we're really trying to solve this problem. So 4 ethical things. I'm going to divorce. I'm not going to divorce. We're going to try to work it out, or I'm going to get out of here for a while, see what happens. Okay. So once we have our decision or our stakeholders in place and our options that our decision maker take place, and all we have left to do is fill in how each person's affected. So I'll go through one column. I won't go through them all. You can pause your screen if you want to read, obviously, but like just to show you an example. So like the first one here, okay, Bob could do nothing. So maybe Bob would feel bad his wife was continuing to cheat on him. Mary would be happy that she could continue the affair, but could feel bad that Bob knows. George might feel bad for Bob, but wouldn't feel guilty that he broke up a marriage. The boyfriend would be happy that he could continue to have his affair with Mary. And Timmy, the kid, probably would not know anything, was wrong, and could continue with his life as normal. You see, so this is one column, and then we'll do that for all four. Just put ourselves in the mindset of the person. Think about the context. Think about what you know. If that person has told you or is implied like what their position would be, just kind of go off that. If not, you have to use your best judgment onto how you think that person would feel, but don't make it personal to how you exactly would feel. Try to put yourself in their position and think about what would their effect be. Okay. And so once you have that done and you have that done on your piece of paper, then you just submit it into the Dropbox. And then you'll see next week we take that one assignment, okay, and then we turn it into the two applications, okay? So what I recommend is you look through this video as many times as you need it, look through the information as much time as need, read the instructions a bunch of times, take your time, be careful, getting all the details correct. Email me if you have any questions throughout the week, but then get these into the Dropboxes by their due dates, and then start looking forward to the quizzes for the next week. Because remember, next week your Chapter 5 quiz will be due Monday night, so you want to make sure you keep up with those things as you go along. So I hope this video is helpful. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. That's what I'm here for. If not, good luck on your work this week, and I look forward to reading what you guys have submitted. All right, so for now, I'll say goodbye and good night.